Our distinguished speaker today is Christopher Schroeder, the Charles S. Murphy Professor Emeritus of Law and Professor Emeritus of Public Policy. Professor Schroeder joined the Duke Law faculty in 1979 and taught property, as well as courses on Congress, federal policymaking, environmental law, and cybersecurity. In 1998, he founded the program in public law, which is now the Richard A. Horvitz Program in Constitutional and Public Law, to promote an understanding of public institutions, the constitutional framework in which they function, and the principles and laws that apply to the work of public officials. He retired from teaching in 2020, but in October 2021 was appointed by President Joe Biden as Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel. On his retirement from that position in July 2023, Professor Schroeder was presented with the Edmund J. Randolph Award, the department's highest honor, by Attorney General Merrick Garland in recognition of outstanding contributions over the course of his career. Professor Schroeder.
Thank you, Dean Abrams, faculty colleagues, family, friends, and the class of 2024. Let me join in wishing you the best and congratulating you on this fine achievement. Now, I have not had the privilege of teaching any of you, but I've talked to and worked with several of you, and you have all spoken very highly of your classmates and how much you and your classmates have enjoyed your time at Duke. Although I do understand none of you are going to miss attending classes in Scharf Hall, my charge is to offer you some searching and valuable advice as you go out the door. Unfortunately, this is actually one of the worst times to provide that kind of advice. You're probably thinking you've gotten a lot of advice from career services, from your faculty. You've made your decisions. You're ready to get on with it. So how about I offer you some pearls of wisdom that you can store away for some time later down the road. The problem with that is the social science is pretty sure about this. You will not remember a single thing I'm about to say tonight. This was certainly true of me when I was in your seat a long time ago. Besides, what advice could I possibly give your class, which was farsighted enough to enroll in a law school that would rise 8 places in the rankings while you were attending law school? Still, the dean is taking me out for dinner after this ceremony on the condition that I provide a couple of bits of advice, or at least some interesting thoughts. So I'm going to offer you a couple of takeaways from the public service I was able to weave in and out of my life, while retaining always a home base here as an academic at Duke Law School, all with Duke's generous forbearance in the form of a lot of unpaid leaves of absence from the faculty. In late spring 1987, I got an out-of-the-blue phone call from a friend of a friend who I did not know, but who was chief counsel of the Senate Judiciary Committee. President Reagan had nominated several academics to the federal appellate bench, and so the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a senator named Joe Biden, had decided that the committee needed its own academics to help evaluate the scholarship of those nominees. Lucky for me, I had earned a sabbatical in the upcoming year, and besides, this gig seemed like a very part-time job, so I said I would do it. Then Justice Powell stepped down unexpectedly that summer, and the president nominated Judge Robert Bork. My work then pivoted from appellate nominees to preparing for a Supreme Court confirmation hearing in the fall, and it became totally full-time. These hearings would become the most contentious in decades, maybe ever, and they completely swallowed up my sabbatical. But they also opened up an entirely new set of opportunities, something that I did not realize fully at the time. After the Bork hearings, extended confirmations and contested confirmations became the norm, for better or worse. In the ensuing years, the retirements of Justices Brennan, Marshall, White, and Blackmun, one after the other, produced a set of nominations and hearings for the next several years. I was lucky enough to get roped into the hearings for all of them, except the last one of them. Now, I say I was lucky. It is very hard to overemphasize the role of luck in opening further opportunities for me, most of which were also equally unexpected. In this particular case, I knew someone who just happened to be looking for part-time assistance from someone who knew some amount of expertise in reading and evaluating law review articles. At just the moment I happened to have a sabbatical coming up, and just happened to work for an employer, Duke University, who took seriously its stated commitment that the knowledge it helped to generate should be put to public service. Now, besides having some luck, I did work hard. Long nights reviewing documents, debating and discussing nominees' strengths and weaknesses, briefing and discussing legal issues with the chair. Sometimes those sessions felt a little bit like a law school seminar. But mostly grueling hard work in the pressure cooker of Senate confirmation hearings. I ended up becoming chief counsel of the committee. Then I returned to Duke, only to be offered a position in the Office of Legal Counsel in the Department of Justice when President Clinton became president. The office provides advice to the entire executive branch, but in particular the White House and the President and the Attorney General. Our departing faculty colleague, Walter Dellinger, headed the office. I worked alongside Professor Jeff Powell, and that's also where I first met a very younger Professor Stuart Benjamin, before he was a professor. Once again, I returned to Duke, thinking I had worked in government for the last time. But more than a decade later, lightning struck again. I headed back to DC to run the Office of Legal Policy in the Obama-Biden administration. Then I once again returned to Duke, thinking it was really the last time I was going to commute up to DC, and I retired from Duke in 2020. But it turned out there was one more lightning bolt headed my way. When the Biden-Harris ticket won the White House, I was nominated to head the Office of Legal Counsel. As you see, I'm becoming something of a recidivist. Following in Walter's footsteps was a thrill for me, although the seriousness of advising the President and the Attorney General was pretty daunting. Hard work was still the watchword. The range of issues I've been privileged to work on while at the Department of Justice have been somewhat head-spinning. We dealt with issues as diverse as whether a proposed counterterrorism operation overseas was legal under domestic and international law, what actions the President could take lawfully if Congress failed to raise the statutory debt ceiling and the country was about to default on its debt, and what could be done legally about mysterious balloons floating over Montana that might have been sent by China. And as you can imagine, we dealt with a number of questions about immunity of former close aides of former presidents, as well as a range of questions about executive privilege applied to former presidents. Our stated responsibility was to advise the President and other members of the executive branch on what the law allowed them to do, rather than to rubber stamp what they had already decided to do. I took that responsibility seriously, and just as importantly, I was surrounded by other lawyers, both career and politically appointed, who were equally serious about it. Maybe some of you in this graduating class will continue the line of Duke Law School faculty and students who have served the country in the Justice Department. On this faculty, that includes Stuart Benjamin, Jeff Powell, Walter Dellinger, Sarah Beal, Lisa Griffin, Sam Buell, and Neil Siegel. And my apologies if I've left somebody out. The list of graduates is much too long to name. I would just point out one example, Michael Dreeben, class of '81, who worked in the Solicitor General's office for more than 30 years and has argued more than 100 cases before the Supreme Court. Each of these people might have their own struck by lightning story to tell. The stories, I bet, would not be just about luck, but also about the importance of remaining focused on your personal integrity and your professional responsibilities. I absorbed that lesson from so many colleagues in government, including 3 outstanding attorneys general, but it is a lesson that is entirely transportable wherever your work takes you. Also transportable are the words of Louis Pasteur, "Fortune rewards the prepared mind." I have been blessed to work with people who also maintained the highest levels of competence. So whatever path you take, I will leave you with these 2 parting thoughts. Number 1, expect the unexpected. A big part of life is luck. Number 2, maintain your high standards, your integrity, and your professionalism. Then when the first thing happens, the second thing will mean that you're ready for the opportunity. And I guess I'll add a quick number 3. Plan on returning to Duke Law School to share your own struck by lightning stories with the faculty and other returning alums. Wherever the next chapter of your life takes you, best of luck and congratulations.